hello. I'm coming on a minute early just to make sure that I manage this time because I had a few problems last week trying to do this live. So I'm just welcoming you all now, and you may be watching live or you may be watching on replay. If you're watching on replay, that's great actually, because I'd like to really encourage you to pause through this session today as I'm going to be asking some questions which I want you to consider. And yeah, there are going to be a lot of questions in today's session. So this is week number 3, and I just want to welcome you all. Week number 1 was the essence of who we are, coming back to our being still, getting out of works, being in God. So just welcome to all of you. We've just hit the hour. I'm so glad you're here, whether you're on replay or whether you're watching live. And if you're on replay, please feel free to pause as I ask questions today, because I will be asking you some questions, because today is a lot about taking an inventory about where we are, what labels we've put on ourselves. As I mentioned earlier when I was introducing this talk, it's about what's on the inside of us. Is it the same as what we say on the outside on the tin? So last week we talked about how God is love and that experiencing God's love is foundational to a healthy, stable childhood. We all know that, don't we? And we particularly looked at a love called Storge, which you may not have heard of. It just means a tender, nurturing family love, and it's the affectionate bond that develops starting with our parents, and then if we have brothers and sisters, and then the wider family. And it's the kind of love that we should all have, that we should all grow up in that secure foundation of. And if we don't have it, we can develop all sorts of coping mechanisms and habits to compensate, which unfortunately create patterns that we carry into our adult life. Now, everything I'm sharing is my experience. It may not be scientific, but it's exactly what happened to me. So patterns of behaviour set in. So when we don't feel safe in situations, we might fight or flight, for example, or we believe we have to earn affection, so we're always people pleasing. Or we think we need to do well. We're always on a treadmill of performance and trying to achieve. And if you're a high achiever, then people may not realise that you've got underlying problems. I mean, I had a friend, for example, who was so extrovert and chatty in situations, and yet she would tell me that that was because that was her putting up her wall, because she really was extremely anxious in social situations, but nobody knew that. So we learn to cope and we do things in our own strength. But inside, there's a lot going on. And you may get on in life and be fine for years and years and years, but then it might start to come out with anger, upset, frustrations, depression, panic. This is what happened to me in my 50s. So one of the things we do as well is that we take on, this is what I want to look at today. We take on roles and labels that mask who we really are as we try to fit into the world. And I give some examples in my book, I Was Born in Africa, of how I so easily picked up people's accents and tried to adapt like a chameleon to whatever environment I was in, to the point of lying. I would lie about what I'd done at the weekend, what I liked to do, because I was so afraid that I would be found out, that people wouldn't like the real me, and that I was trying to fit in with my peers around me. But by doing all that, I was losing the real me. I was afraid to be the real me, and it led me into career choices that I wouldn't have actually necessarily made, choices in life, had I really stuck to being content with who I was and feeling safe with who I was. And, we hide behind facades thinking people won't like the real us, that we have nothing to offer. And as we develop wrong habits and take on roles that aren't really for us and labels, it also develops in us unhealthy relationships because we don't know our boundaries. And we can invite people into our lives who have more influence over us as we try to please them, or we don't really tell them what we're like. So they don't know the true us, which isn't really fair on them. And all this coping and these labels and the things we do can work for a time, for a long period of time. Trying to be and do according to the world's expectations and according to our own pressures and expectations that we put on ourselves. So the carrying roles and labels and trying to fit might be something that you have battled with since childhood. You've always known that your deeper desires are not the same as other people's, that you're different from the acceptable norm. You've got visions and dreams that other people don't identify with, or your character just doesn't seem to fit with those around you. In the culture that you're in what is the acceptable norm. And you may have tried to follow who you are, but you've hit resistance. People didn't understand you. This could start right in your family. You might become a black sheep, a maverick, as you tried to be true to your calling. Or you might have given up and retreated into your shell and are actually not feeling truly satisfied in your life. And in fact, these struggles in life apply to most of us because we're in a world where we're born into an acceptable culture, an acceptable norm, and if we don't fit with that, it's really hard to be different, and especially in today's world with social media always trying to create image, especially young people, they're trying to follow this image, and there's a lot of pressure on performance. And we have it all growing up through school as well anyway. Even without the social media, there's a certain way we're supposed to behave. We're supposed to achieve certain things. If we do well at school and studies and work, the world will approve and accept us. So this all becomes sort of ingrained in our heads. Bit of brainwashing going on there, really. And so you may have kept going, tried to improve yourself. You may have done really well. Or you may have got into self-help programs, tried all sorts of things, to therapy, to get yourself, to find out who you are, to find out why your emotions are the way they are, but you're still in the rat race, you're still struggling in social situations, you're unhappy deep down, you may be feeling unknown, unheard, unseen, or misunderstood. Now, to some of you, this will sound familiar. To others of you, you'll think, what is Vanessa talking about? I am so content with who I am. I'm fulfilling all my dreams. I'm very, very happy with my life, and I'm so pleased for you. But I do feel that the majority of people do have some struggle in this area of not being their true selves and trying to meet the expectations from the world around them. So the last two sessions, just as a reminder again, that will build up to this, we talked about getting back to the essence of who we are by discovering that we are human beings, not human doings. We are human beings made in the image of God, and we are dearly loved. He is love, and we are accepted as being loved. That's it. He loves us. And this love and nurture, God made a way to give us parents that we receive it even before we're born. They long to have us. We receive it in the womb. And then when we come out into life, we have that secure foundation of being loved, cared for, protected, and accepted. And if we get that, it gives us the confidence and security when we go out into the world, when we start going to nursery and then school, and then we go out into the big bad world. You might not call it bad, the big wide world. And we're so secure in who we are as loved and accepted, and we feel safe. And then we follow the plan God has for us. And we are the unique person He has made us to be because our parents have encouraged us in our uniqueness, and they encourage us to fulfill all our dreams. Is that what happened to you? Well, unfortunately, that's not what happens to most of us. And we go out there with lots of insecurities and we follow wrong paths and we trying to find out who we are, but we don't really know our true identity as being in God. We don't realize how precious and unique we are. Just like no snowflake is the same, not one of us are the same. And I want to help us to get back to that place of being so secure in who we are. That is our identity. And I talked about it last time about saying it's in Christ, in God. And our identity is not about what we do. It shouldn't be about what we do and the roles and the labels we pick up. It should just be about being I am. Who am I? So simply put, identity can be described as our understanding of who we are as individuals and as members of social groups. Now, I'm not going to really talk too much about identity today, because if you want to know more about it, you can read about it in my book, and how my identity was really negatively impacted from losing my mum and the love and security she gave me when I was young. But our identity can be answered by the question, who am I? So if I say to you, who are you? Answering that question is an important part of how you developed growing up and who you are now. So one person, if they asked you, who are you? One person might choose to emphasize their family, religion, interests when describing identity. Another person might emphasize their race, their neighborhood, their job as important elements of who they are. So our personal identity consists of all the things that we believe make us us. But if you notice, most of it is to do with what's going on around us and what we do. So, and often we get the answer to who I am based on what the world, or who the world says I am. Who do my parents say I am? What do my peers say about me? What do they say about me at school? You know, school reports. I always used to have the same thing in my school reports. Vanessa is a chatterbox. Though, you know, and you remember all the negative things. You know, what do my co-workers say about me? My neighbours, my teachers? And what do I learn from the media about myself? And this all builds up a picture of who we think we are. And we take on labels and roles and functions. Some can be negative, some can be positive, and that define us. But is that truly who I am? Now, if we can get back to the real nuts and bolts of it, going back to the essence of who we are, then this is key to moving forward. And so I want you to consider, if I ask you, who are you? Write down the things that make you who you are, and then look at where did those come from? And there's a song, a Christian song by I think they're Australian, Hillsong Worship is the team who sing this song, and it's called I Am Who You Say I Am. And that's in reference to who God says we are. And I'm sorry to go on about this, but if you go back to watching week 1, the essence of who we are is found in God, because He created us and He created us in His image. And not only that, He just planned us so intricately and created our character. He knew which family to put us into, what environment to put us into. so that we would become and do the thing that is most fulfilling to suit who we are. And so we need to find out who we are from his perspective, since he made us and we are made into his image. So I call this renew. You need to learn who the God of the Bible is and discover who he says you are. And if all that doesn't line up with what you believe about yourself, then you need to get your mind renewed with the truth of who you are. And everything he says about you is good, not the labels and the negative things anyone else has put upon you, or the roles that people say are you. They define you by what you do. You are defined by being a daughter and a son of God who is loved by him and made in his image. And yes, what others say about us can help create our identity and what we believe about ourselves, but these can all shift. It's like shifting sands. They shift with time, they shift with circumstances, with the season in our life, with the things that happen to us. But who you are in God is secure and unchanging. It's your anchor. And everything, I've already said this, everything he says about you is good and it is positive. If there are any negative voices, we need to kick those out. So this is the renewing. We need to renew our mind with the truth of who we are in him. And then the next thing we need to do, which I'm inviting you to do, is to take an inventory of your life, where you are now. It's like taking a slice of cake out and looking at that piece of cake and what are the ingredients in that cake. Think about some of your roles that you've got. Why do you do them? Do they make you feel good? Are you doing them out of a sense of duty? Are you doing them because they give you value more than anything else? And if you didn't do that role, you would feel so lost. You know, perhaps you've lost your job, or you were a really good musician and then you can't do music anymore, a sports person, and you've got an injury and there's no way you can be that sports person anymore. And you need to look at some of these roles. Why am I doing them? Can you lay some of them down? And you should, are you doing loads? My whole life was filled with, and still is sometimes, oughts and shoulds. I should do this. I ought to do that. I need to do this. You need to get rid of some of those things. I'm not talking about, obviously, responsibilities. You might have dependents, elderly parents, children. I'm not talking about just throwing in the towel. And I'm also not talking about doing things that are kind and generous. You know, we're here to love and serve each other and be in relationship. But what are you doing just to please others that give you all your value, without which you would struggle to find your worth? What are you doing from peer pressure? Even in the church, what are you doing? Are people taking advantage of you because you're always the one who's willing to do things? They say, is it like 3 or 4% of people in churches are doing all the work? Or are people just leaning on you for stuff, always coming to you, and you always say yes? You're always people pleasing and looking at others, trying to help them, and you've forgotten yourself. So this is where we need to look at our relationships as well. And do your friends know the real you? Are you honest with them about how you feel? Are you able to say no to things? Or are you kind of living a lie there? And actually it can make us angry or unseen or unheard. We go, oh, nobody's listening to me, I'm not a voice, but actually we're too scared to tell people what we think. Come out of this, as I started to be more authentic and become more true to myself, it did cause upset with some friends and family who didn't like the change in me. They didn't like me being more assertive. They didn't like the change in the status quo. they thought what they saw on the outside, the label on the tin, was what they were getting on the inside, and now it wasn't what they thought it was. And you may lose some friends over it. But true friends you can talk to and you can be real with, and they will understand. But you may have to establish different boundaries or lose those relationships. And I encourage you to talk to friends out of love if you are in a situation where you're not being the real you. And remember, this is difficult. I know how difficult this is, because one of the traits that I had in all this people pleasing and not being me was I wanted to avoid confrontation at all costs. So that might be you as well. And then, just build up relationships with people who make you feel good, who don't drain you, who have the same dreams as you, or who are just one step ahead of you. So it's re-establishing our relationships, as well as getting rid of things that we're doing that aren't right for us, that give us value, and renewing our mind with the truth of who we are. And I want to just look at the value side of things a little bit as well. How much do you value yourself? One of my traits was, and still is, to take all the attention off me, all the focus off me, and just talk to that person I'm with, find out all about them, give to them all they need, so that it's like my wall of defense, so that nobody will get to know the real me. And it's to protect myself, because they might not like me, or I might not have anything to say. But you see, I do have stuff to say. I do have value. And so we need to start valuing ourselves, valuing our opinions, and learning to receiving compliments, receiving gifts even. And I talk about gifts because actually I was very good at giving away to people, giving money, giving gifts, but not very good at receiving it myself, or even spending on myself. When we were going through difficult times with the kids, financially, I spent nothing on myself for years. But actually, I deserve to have something nice sometimes, and so do you. So start valuing yourself, whether it's giving yourself a little bit of time, free time for you to do something nice, or whether it's receiving from someone else. And it could be financial. Maybe you need to invest in yourself. That's one of the things that I started to do, was to invest in some courses. That's how I ended up writing my book, because I invested in a book course. So you may think I've asked a lot of questions today without giving answers, but it's good to pause and take an inventory of our lives every now and then. And I began to do this. Well, I had to do it as I wrote my book, because all I had was the title, I Was Born in Africa. And my book coach said, well, that's obviously about your life then, isn't it? And it was like, oh yes, so it is. So I began to journal my life story growing up, from when I was born in Africa. And I was really shocked at what came out for me in that book, which was about mother loss and how it had impacted my life. And I was really shocked, because I didn't think I had anything wrong with me. I didn't think I needed healing from the loss of losing my mother. It was so long ago, decades ago, but I had actually never properly grieved her. And in fact, I didn't grieve her. I'm not sure I've even fully grieved her now, but I only really began to grieve her when I went to her sister's funeral 2 or 3 years ago. So an aunt. This is decades later. And I just thought, oh my gosh, it's like being at my own mother's funeral. And I realised I needed to grieve. But I had put up a wall that was so high, and I had hidden behind it so long ago that I didn't even have any sensations of emotions or feeling any grief. So if somebody said to me, oh, you poor thing, you lost your mum, and I was going like, what, really? So we do need to deal with our grief, Otherwise, it will still be there, but just buried deep down. And one of the first things we need to do as we're taking these labels off is realize that, that we might be in denial, that we have put this cover up of coping. I'm a coper, an overcomer. There's nothing wrong. I don't need to deal with any of that stuff. But you do, not just for yourself, but so you can help others as well. Because one of the things I discovered as I was writing the book, that having never truly having grieved my mum, and realizing that there were whole complex behavioral patterns, because I didn't have that love, that nurture, that safety and that security that affected my whole life. Until I realized that, I couldn't be set free from all these negative things, because I didn't know why I had them. And so now I can help others. So this leads me to saying, I want you to join me next week, because I've got my book coach coming on. We're going to have a conversation about getting our hearts healed and how we can turn our pain into purpose. So it was Daniela, my book coach, who helped me discover that I needed to write a book about my life, and that as I found the healing in that I would then be able to bring healing to others, as I identified why I had my pain, where it was coming from. But before that, I had to actually identify that I had pain, but that I'd put this wall up. So I'd love for you to join me next week. Daniela is an award-winning best-selling author. She's written 6 books. She's the CEO of Tell Your Story Coaching. And as I say, she was my book coach. And she also will share about her own life, because she took risks. She had to switch from being a school teacher to becoming an entrepreneur. And in doing so, she is now fulfilling the calling on her life. She's taken off all those labels. She's stopped people pleasing and doing all that stuff that the world expected of her. And she's now pursuing her true calling. But we will discuss all that next week, and I hope you'll be there. Please note that it won't be at the same time as this week. It's going to be at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, and 4 p.m. in the UK. And I'm sending you all an invite to it, and it's called Conversations from the Heart. But meanwhile, I am praying that you look at your life, you take an inventory, and you realize that a lot of your doing is just a veneer, labels, striving, and that you can come back to just being at peace and the foundations of knowing who you are in God, being loved by Him, and rebuild from there. And in forthcoming weeks, I'm going to be discussing some strategies to help us rebuild, which includes getting our hearts healed. And we'll be talking about that with Daniela as well. So thank you so much for watching if you've been here. And see you soon. Love you all. Bye.